Welcome back to the Bitcoin Zodiac, where we view Bitcoin through the lens of financial astrology. Here we examine generational cycles over short-term noise. May carries a strange kind of honesty. It's not a loud or dramatic honesty, the kind of honesty that arrives quietly in your body first. You notice what no longer feels sustainable, what no longer feels aligned with your nervous system or matches the future you that you are slowly becoming. The new moon in Taurus on May 16th opens this cycle with a deep exhale. Taurus wants stability but not stagnation, and there really is a difference. This new moon asks you to plant yourself somewhere real and nourishing, somewhere your energy can actually grow roots. You may feel drawn toward simplicity now, less noise and less urgency, a place of less performing. There is wisdom in slowing down enough to hear yourself again. This is an especially grounding new moon after months of rapid emotional movement. Taurus reminds you that your life is shaped by your daily relationship with your body, your money, your time, and your attention. Pay attention to what feels peaceful rather than impressive. The next day, Mercury enters Gemini. The mental atmosphere changes quickly here. Conversations speed up and ideas multiply. Curiosity returns. You may suddenly feel more social and more expressive or more mentally alert after a heavier emotional season. Writing, teaching, studying, brainstorming, communicating, and reconnecting all become more active. But Gemini can also scatter your focus if you are not careful. Not every thought deserves your devotion. On May 19th, Mercury squares the lunar nodes. This feels like standing at a crossroads mentally. A conversation may shift your direction, or a piece of information may challenge an old belief. You may notice tension between logic and intuition. Gemini wants facts, Pisces wants surrender, and Virgo wants certainty. Somewhere in the middle, you are trying to hear your own truth clearly. Be mindful of overstimulation around this time, as too many opinions can disconnect you from your inner knowing. You do not need to consume more information to trust yourself. Then comes one of the most important moments of the month. On May 22nd, Uranus reaches cazimi in Gemini. This energy feels electric. A realization may arrive suddenly, or a breakthrough, a disruption, or a completely new perspective that changes the way you think about your future. Uranus brings awakening through interruption. Gemini rules communication, media, learning, networks, transportation, and technology. Pay attention because something about the way we exchange information is rapidly evolving now. Personally, this can feel like your mind waking up to possibilities you previously could not see. There can also be nervous energy around this transit. Your sleep patterns may shift, your thoughts may move quickly, so you may feel restless or emotionally detached for brief periods. Ground your body while your mind expands. The week that follows carries more intensity. On May 25th, Mars in Taurus squares, Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. This aspect can expose power struggles, control issues, resistance, and pressure building quietly beneath the surface over time. Taurus wants stability, Aquarius wants liberation, and Pluto tends to reveal what has been operating unconsciously. So you may notice frustration rising where you have felt trapped, manipulated, or emotionally compressed. Be aware to move carefully with conflict around this time. Not every battle deserves your energy. This transit can also reveal incredible inner strength when handled consciously. Sometimes growth comes from realizing you no longer need to force what is already misaligned. By the time we arrive at the full moon in Sagittarius on May 31st, something emotionally opens. Sagittarius wants a deep perspective. After a month focused on grounding, information, tension, and mental shifts, this full moon lifts your eyes toward the horizon again. You may feel a desire for freedom, truth, travel, learning, or meaning. Something that felt emotionally confusing earlier in the month may suddenly make sense, because Sagittarius reminds us that healing sometimes comes from widening the lens, and that there is more life ahead of you than the moment you are currently inside. Let's look at this astrological window specifically through the lens of Bitcoin. While many of the broader themes overlap collectively, there are several important energetic shifts uniquely influencing Bitcoin during this period. there is a distinct shift unfolding across the second half of May. You can feel the market searching for direction in the midst of geopolitical instability, but underneath the surface, something deeper is happening with Bitcoin itself. This period feels less like a simple continuation of the trend and more like a recalibration point between old narratives and emerging ones. Many of the transits this month center around Gemini, Taurus, Aquarius, and Sagittarius energy. These signs all relate strongly to Bitcoin's core identity. Taurus governs value and money. Gemini governs networks, information, communication, and adoption. Aquarius governs decentralization, technology, collective systems, and disruption. And Sagittarius governs belief systems, global expansion, and ideology. When these signs activate simultaneously, Bitcoin often enters periods where narrative, adoption, volatility, and macro perception accelerate together. Let's move through this window carefully. And this new moon feels deeply important for Bitcoin because Taurus rules tangible value, wealth preservation, assets, and monetary systems. Bitcoin was born as an alternative monetary structure, so Taurus activations tend to bring attention back toward Bitcoin's role as a store of value. The market may initially appear calm or declining around this new moon, but new moons often plant seeds before visible movement emerges. This particular Taurus new moon feels stabilizing after periods of emotional or speculative excess. Institutional players may become more focused on long-term positioning rather than short-term momentum. There is a quieter accumulation energy here. Psychologically, this transit shifts attention toward questions like, what actually holds value? What survives uncertainty? What can be trusted long-term? Bitcoin continues to mature under these questions. This new moon favors patience over emotional reaction. It supports strategic positioning, portfolio strengthening, and focusing on higher time frame conviction rather than lower time frame noise. This is not reckless speculative energy. It is foundational energy. On the 17th of May, the atmosphere changes quickly once Mercury enters Gemini. Information flow speeds up dramatically, news cycles intensify, social media activity increases, and narratives spread rapidly. Gemini energy often correlates with heightened volatility in Bitcoin because Bitcoin itself operates through networks, communication systems, and collective participation. This transit can significantly increase the speed and intensity of market activity. News cycles may move rapidly, headlines can shift sentiment quickly, and social media discussions around Bitcoin are likely to become much louder. Retail participation may increase during this period, bringing more speculative energy into the market and creating sharper emotional swings in price action as traders react quickly to new information and continually changing narratives. Price action may become more reactive during this period. Markets can move sharply based on perception, rumors, interviews, policy commentary, or regulatory developments. This is excellent energy for traders who thrive in volatility. It is less comfortable for emotionally reactive investors. Mercury in Gemini rewards adaptability and information processing, but it can also create confusion if you consume too much conflicting market opinion. This is a reminder to stay anchored to your system. Also, on May 17th, the transiting Jupiter forms a sesqui-square aspect to Bitcoin's natal Pluto, creating tension between expansion and power that can intensify market ambition, speculation, and the broader transformation of financial systems. This transit amplifies power dynamics surrounding Bitcoin. Jupiter expands whatever it touches. Pluto rules transformation, power, control, institutions, and deep structural change. When these planets interact through friction, markets often wrestle with excess. This energy can show up as increasingly aggressive, speculative behavior across the financial markets, with traders and institutions taking larger risks in pursuit of expansion. There may also be growing competition between major financial players positioning themselves around Bitcoin and digital assets, alongside rising regulatory pressure and scrutiny. Leverage in the market could expand quickly during this period, creating amplified volatility, while overconfidence among market participants may lead some investors to underestimate risk or believe momentum can continue indefinitely. There is a growing feeling that Bitcoin is becoming too important to ignore, but this aspect also warns against extremes. Financially, this is a transit where greed can rise quickly. Narratives around massive upside potential may intensify. Large players may attempt to influence market direction more aggressively. This energy can produce powerful price expansion phases, but also sharp corrections if speculation becomes overheated. Long term, however, this transit reinforces Bitcoin's evolutionary role in reshaping global power structures surrounding money itself. On May 19th, Mercury squares the lunar nodes, creating a period of mental tension and conflicting narratives that can leave markets feeling uncertain about direction and future momentum. This feels mentally noisy. Markets may struggle with conflicting narratives around direction. One headline says expansion, another says recession. One analyst calls for a breakout, another calls for collapse. This transit often creates informational crossroads. For Bitcoin specifically, this may correspond with heightened debate around regulation, adoption, technological scaling, or macroeconomic policy. Sentiment can shift rapidly here. Traders should be careful not to overtrade based purely on emotional reactions to news flow. Mercury square the nodes tends to create temporary confusion before clarity emerges later. It is better to wait for confirmation rather than attempting to force certainty prematurely. On May 22nd, Uranus reaches cazimi in Gemini, illuminating breakthrough ideas, technological innovation, and sudden shifts in collective perception that could rapidly influence Bitcoin, digital markets, and the future of financial communication systems. This is one of the most important transits of the month for Bitcoin. Uranus is strongly linked with Bitcoin archetypally. It rules decentralization, disruption, rebellion, innovation, technology, and liberation from outdated systems. When Uranus becomes cazimi, it sits in the heart of the sun. Its symbolism becomes purified, illuminated, and intensified. With Uranus activated in Gemini, this period can correlate with major technological announcements, breakthroughs in digital infrastructure, and rapid developments across communication networks and online systems. Public perception around Bitcoin and digital assets may shift quickly, with new narratives around adoption gaining momentum almost overnight. Markets can become highly reactive under this energy, leading to surprising price movements as investors respond to innovation, emerging technologies, and sudden changes in collective geopolitical sentiment. Bitcoin may experience sudden volatility around this period. The market can react quickly and unexpectedly. But on a deeper level, this transit strengthens the evolutionary narrative surrounding Bitcoin's role within the digital age. Something may click collectively during this window, a reframing and recognition that the monetary system is continuing to digitize regardless of resistance. Long-term investors should pay close attention to developments around this transit. Important themes may emerge that shape the next cycle. On May 25th, Mars squares Pluto retrograde, creating an intense and highly charged atmosphere that can bring power struggles, sharp volatility, emotional reactivity, and increased pressure within the financial markets. This is highly intense market energy. Mars represents force, aggression, momentum, and conflict. Pluto's retrograde intensifies the buried pressure beneath the surface. This aspect often correlates with sharp volatility, liquidations, political tensions, institutional conflict, or power struggles within financial systems. For Bitcoin markets, this can create aggressive price swings. The emotional tone may become reactive. This is not ideal energy for impulsive trading. Leverage becomes especially dangerous under Mars-Pluto aspects because moves can extend further than expected in both directions. There is also a larger macro symbolism unfolding here. Taurus governs traditional value systems. Aquarius governs emerging decentralized systems. The square between these signs reflects the tension between old financial structures and new technological monetary frameworks. Bitcoin sits directly inside this transition story. On May 26th, transiting Jupiter squares Bitcoin's natal Chiron, highlighting deeper vulnerabilities, market insecurities, and collective fears around Bitcoin's long-term stability, while also creating opportunities for growth and maturation through challenge and exposure. This transit can expose vulnerabilities around collective confidence. Chiron represents wounds, healing, insecurity, and unresolved pain. When Jupiter activates Chiron through tension, emotional exaggeration can emerge. Markets may temporarily overreact to fear narratives or perceived weaknesses. This transit could bring greater attention to concerns surrounding Bitcoin and the broader digital asset space, including questions around security, regulation, long-term sustainability, and market volatility. Public skepticism may also rise during this period, with investors becoming more sensitive to risk and more reactive to negative news or uncertainty across the financial markets. Yet Chiron transits also create healing through exposure. Long-term, Bitcoin becomes stronger precisely because its weaknesses are forced into the open and addressed. This is part of Bitcoin's maturation process. Not every challenge weakens an asset. Most challenges refine and strengthen it. On May 30th, transiting Jupiter forms a supportive sextile to Bitcoin's natal Uranus, creating an expansive and innovative energy that can support technological breakthroughs, growing adoption, and renewed optimism surrounding Bitcoin's long-term evolution. This is one of the strongest long-term growth signatures in the entire sequence. Jupiter expands, Uranus innovates. Together, they create breakthroughs. This transit supports continued growth and expansion within the Bitcoin ecosystem, particularly through increasing adoption, technological innovation, and broader institutional openness toward digital assets. Global awareness around Bitcoin may continue to expand during this period. Our optimism surrounding the long-term future of decentralized technologies and financial infrastructure gains stronger momentum across the markets. Price action can respond very favorably under this energy. There is optimism here, but unlike earlier Jupiter-Pluto tension, this feels more constructive. The market may begin recognizing new opportunities rather than simply reacting emotionally. This aspect also supports the idea that Bitcoin continues evolving from a fringe technology into a recognized financial infrastructure. Long-term investors may view this transit as confirmation that the broader adoption cycle remains intact. On May 31st, transiting Jupiter forms a semi-square to Bitcoin's natal moon, amplifying collective market emotions and increasing the potential for exaggerated sentiment swings, emotional trading behavior, and heightened psychological volatility. This transit brings emotional amplification within market sentiment. The moon in financial astrology often reflects collective psychology. Jupiter enlarges emotional reactions. Bullishness can become euphoric. Fear can become exaggerated. This creates emotionally unstable conditions short term. The market may struggle with moderation. For traders, emotional discipline becomes critical here. Do not confuse emotional intensity with clarity. To close out this session, on May 31st, the full moon in Sagittarius brings a more expansive and conviction-driven energy to the financial markets, highlighting themes of global adoption, long-term vision, collective belief systems, and the broader philosophical narrative surrounding Bitcoin's role in the future of money. This full moon feels expansive, ideological, and global. Sagittarius governs belief systems, philosophy, international markets, publishing, broadcasting, and collective vision. Bitcoin often responds strongly to Sagittarius energy because Bitcoin itself represents a philosophical movement as much as a financial asset. This full moon may bring greater clarity around the global direction of Bitcoin adoption and the evolving role digital assets are beginning to play within the broader financial system. Institutional perspectives toward Bitcoin could continue shifting during this time, while public awareness and international discussions surrounding monetary sovereignty, decentralized finance, and the future of money expand more rapidly. Important global developments connected to digital assets may also come into focus, reinforcing Bitcoin's growing presence within larger macroeconomic and geopolitical conversations. Emotionally, markets may become highly conviction-driven around this time. Narratives matter enormously under Sagittarius full moons. People want meaning, they want direction, they want a larger story to believe in. And Bitcoin continues attracting attention precisely because it represents a long-term alternative vision for money, sovereignty, and digital ownership. Overall, this entire period feels transitional, not necessarily in the sense of immediate finality, but in the sense that Bitcoin continues moving from speculative outsider asset towards structural global relevance. There is volatility here. There is emotional intensity here, but underneath it all, there is also continued maturation. This is not the astrology of disappearance. This is the astrology of acceleration. So have a lovely new moon. Until next time, peace, love, and Bitcoin.